Chapter 281. Arthur and I finished our dance just as the next song began to play, sending more couples onto the floor. The atmosphere shifted, the ballroom filling with movement and laughter as the celebration truly began. I turned to him. "Do you want to meet my father?" Arthur tilted his head slightly, considering. "Sure. You don't have to," I added, watching his reaction. "He just wants to meet you." Arthur smiled. "I don't mind. If anything, I should get to know him." Satisfied, I nodded and linked my arm with his, leading him toward where my father was speaking with other guests. My father was effortlessly holding court, exchanging pleasantries with nobles and corporate heads alike. But the moment his eyes landed on us, his attention shifted, a knowing smile forming on his face. Arthur inclined his head in a polite bow. "Greetings, Marquis Springshaper." My father chuckled. "No need to be so stiff." He took a sip from his glass before regarding Arthur with sharp yet amused eyes. "I am glad to finally meet one of the biggest clients of Vauquert, as well as rank one of the greatest generation." He paused, his smile widening. "Though, of course, I am more pleased to meet the young man who has captured my daughter's interest." I felt my face heat up instantly. "Father." He laughed. Arthur, ever composed, responded smoothly. "I am honored to be considered someone Rose likes." My father hummed, eyes narrowing ever so slightly as he observed him. "Well, you are a special young man." His tone was thoughtful, appraising. "Such strength, such potential at your age." Arthur met his gaze without wavering. "Thank you, Marquis. That means a lot. Anyway, you two should enjoy yourselves," my father said, smiling as he dismissed us with a casual wave. Arthur and I turned away, walking side by side as the lively hum of conversation filled the ballroom. "Well, that was pleasant," Arthur remarked. I raised an eyebrow. "Did you expect otherwise?" He let out a small chuckle, scratching the back of his head. "Let's just say I have experience with Rachel's father." I sighed. "That's entirely different. You were in a coma for a month, Arthur. Rachel personally healed you every day, constantly traveling back and forth between Mythos Academy and the Creighton estate through gates just to keep you stable." Arthur nodded, his expression softening. "I know. I'm very grateful to her." As we continued walking, immersed in quiet conversation, I suddenly noticed someone approaching. Arthur stiffened. I turned to see a boy, tall, sharp-featured, carrying himself with the kind of confidence that came from both power and status. His black eyes gleamed under the chandeliers, his onyx hair a clear mark of his lineage. Jack Blazespout, son of Duke Blazespout, heir to one of the most powerful noble houses in the Slatemark Empire, second only to the imperial family itself. He inclined his head slightly, offering a polite smile. "Greetings." His voice was smooth, deliberate. His gaze flickered between us before settling on me. "Congratulations, Lady Rose." I nodded, offering a practiced, courtly smile in return. "Thank you, Lord Jack Blazespout." Although his words were directed at me, his eyes never left Arthur. In this world, 3 names stood at the forefront of our generation. Lucifer Windward, Jack Blazespout, Arthur Nightingale. 3 prodigies, each with power that set them apart from the rest. And geniuses? Geniuses were drawn to one another. That was inevitable. But the way Jack was looking at Arthur now, this wasn't mere curiosity. There was too much tension, too much hostility. Jack's smile was polished, his posture relaxed. Yet every inch of him radiated challenge. "I've heard a lot about you too," he said smoothly. "Current rank 1 of Mythos Academy." He extended his hand. Arthur took it. For a moment nothing happened. Then a shift. A near imperceptible clash of mana. It was subtle, controlled, contained within the handshake. But I could feel it. Their energies flared against each other in a silent contest. Pushing, testing, challenging. I narrowed my eyes slightly. I was right. These two didn't just acknowledge each other as rivals. They didn't like each other, which was strange. As far as I knew, they had barely interacted before. And yet, here they were, and the air between them was crackling. Someone annoying now stood in front of me. Jack Blazespout, the primary antagonist of Saga of the Divine Swordsman. The one who bonded with the Orb of Avarice and inherited the heavenly demon's memories and gift. Parallel to Lucifer Windward. Lucifer had two body aspect gifts. Jack had two mind aspect gifts. Lucifer was proud, but at his core he was still a hero. Jack was the opposite. Pure evil. And the future calamity. "You've grown stronger," he murmured, voice dipping into a whisper. His words slithered into my ears, laced with mana. "Isn't that right, Emperor of the World?" I kept my face neutral. Luna's voice rang in my head. How did he detect me? The heavenly demon inside him was at the level of a demigod. I answered. "Your seal can't work against something like that." Jack grinned, sharp and amused. "You're playing a dangerous game, demon child." I whispered back, infusing mana into my voice. His smile widened. "How about we talk alone?" he suggested, this time loud enough for others to hear. I glanced at Rose. "I'll be back," I assured her with a smile before following Jack. We entered a private chamber, and the moment the door shut, a soundproof barrier flared to life. No witnesses. I turned to face him. "How did you know?" I asked. Even with the heavenly demon's presence inside him, detecting Luna's existence shouldn't have been natural. Jack leaned against the wall, completely at ease. "I had my suspicions after Evelyn told me about you. I just needed to confirm it for myself." I frowned. "Are you not afraid I'll expose you?" Jack chuckled. "You can't." I narrowed my eyes. "There's zero evidence," he shrugged. "And I'm a duke's son. You'd be putting your life on the line in a trial that I would win." I clenched my fist. The worst part about Jack. He could completely hide his miasma, even more than normal contractors, which meant that even if I dragged him to trial, nothing would come of it. It was how, in the original novel, one of Lucifer's friends had ended up dead, because he accused Jack, only for Jack to walk away innocent, fooling everyone. Jack flicked his fingers, and white flames danced at his fingertips. Ethereal, shifting embers that pulsed with a purity unnatural for something born of him. Nirvana flames. The epitome of purification. A force that mirrored Lucifer's white mana and the sanctity of pure light, yet distinct in its own right. And in the hands of someone like him, could erase anything, including recordings. "Come on now," Jack said, voice carrying an easy amusement. "Let's not be childish." I exhaled through my nose, resisting the urge to click my tongue. "So, what do you want?" I asked flatly. Jack smiled. "Well, I have the upper hand here, don't I?" He spread his arms lazily, like this was all one big joke. "I want Rose Springshaper." I froze. "What?" My voice was sharp. Jack tilted his head, rubbing the back of his neck like he was discussing a trade deal. "Evelyn keeps asking for her daughter," he said, almost bored. "So I want her. How about it? Seems like a fair deal to me." I scoffed. "There is no way I'm saying yes to that." My gaze darkened. Jack knew it too. He sighed, shaking his head. "Yeah, I figured you'd say that." Then his expression shifted. Gone was the lazy amusement. His dark eyes glinted, something dangerous sparking within them. "But how long do you think you can protect all of them?" His voice was soft, too soft. Cold. Like he already knew the answer. "Against us." The air in the room seemed to tighten. Jack took a step closer. "You're weak, Arthur." Before I could respond, Jack turned away, moving with the same unhurried ease as if he had already won. "You'll find yourself in a pit of despair soon," he murmured, his voice almost gentle, like a preacher delivering a prophecy rather than a threat. His hand lingered on the doorframe, just for a moment. And when you're ready to commit one of the sins, pray. He glanced over his shoulder, a smirk curling at the edges of his lips. Perhaps, if you're lucky, one of the lords will hear you. The smirk deepened. And then, maybe I'll spare you. He stepped out, the soundproof barrier dissolving behind him as the door hissed shut. I stood there for a moment, rolling his words over in my mind. Then I smiled. Crushing arrogant enemies was always the most satisfying. Chapter 282. Cecilia Slatemark. He's very arrogant, Luna mused in my mind. I agreed. Let him be for now, I responded. His arrogance, irritating as it was, wasn't entirely baseless. After all, Jack Blazespout stood above even the Pope of the Order of the Fallen Flame. He wasn't just another noble-born contractor. He was considered the next heavenly demon. Didn't you say there were 2 plans? Luna pressed. Yes, I confirmed. Jack inherited half of the heavenly demon's soul aspect and his mind aspect. The second got the other half, and his body aspect. A grim thought, but reality nonetheless. Stepping out of the room, I spotted Rose. She was waiting, her auburn hair catching the soft glow of the chandeliers. The moment our eyes met, I smiled. Jack wanted her. Not for himself, but because Evelyn, the Pope of the Order of the Fallen Flame, wanted her. To use her as a weapon. That alone was reason enough for me to keep her far, far away from their reach. Evelyn hadn't come after me directly, which aligned with what Charlotte had told me. Instead, she sent Jack, hoping he'd break me. Make me give Rose over willingly. But Jack knew. That wasn't going to happen. In his mind, I was already marked as the future second hero, the one destined to oppose him. Luna's presence in my soul had only cemented his suspicions. Emperor of the world. Vanquisher of the heavenly demon. The one who had already defeated Lucifer in combat. It made sense. And yet his logic had gaps. Because he didn't know. I was fateless. And that was why Luna chose me. Jack asking for Rose outright? That wasn't a demand. It was a provocation. A game. A taunt. A way to show me just how much power he had. And for now, he was right. I was still too weak to touch him. He had an entire cult and a dukedom at his back. For now. He's going to be an annoying opponent for you, Luna mused in my mind. A dangerous one, in fact. Perhaps, I responded, pushing the thought aside as I approached Rose. She glanced up at me, her brown eyes meeting mine. I extended my hand, offering a small smile. Do you want to dance again? She asked. I nodded. Before she could take my hand, a third one grabbed mine. Hey, don't forget about me. Cecilia's voice rang out, playful and demanding all at once. I turned to her, finding the blonde princess grinning up at me, crimson eyes practically glowing with mischief. Cecilia, I said flatly. She huffed, flipping her golden hair over her shoulder. Come on, Rose already got the first dance. Seems only fair I get one too. Rose sighed but didn't argue. Cecilia was persistent. I exhaled through my nose before lifting her hand, pressing a light kiss to the back of it. Then, Princess Cecilia Slatemark, will you grant me this dance? Her lips curled into a bright smile. No reason for me not to. She pulled me onto the dance floor, the orchestra beginning a new piece. Something a little faster, more suited to Cecilia's flair. She moved effortlessly, leading as much as I did, matching my steps with ease. You're good at this, I commented. Well, I am a princess. It'd be embarrassing if I wasn't. We twirled through the dance floor, the music weaving around us. But as we danced, I noticed something. Her energy was different. The teasing spark was still there, but beneath it, something hesitant. Arthur, she said, her voice quieter now. I met her gaze. Do you actually like me? Or do you just tolerate me because I'm, well, me? I blinked. Of all things, I hadn't expected that. Cecilia Slatemark was fearless. She carried herself with absolute confidence, throwing herself into everything without hesitation. And yet, here she was unsure. The dance slowed as I tightened my hold on her waist, leaning in just slightly. "Cecilia," I said, my voice steady. "If I didn't like you, do you think I'd be here, dancing with you?" Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "I don't tolerate you. I want you here." "You?" I paused, watching as she searched my face. "You matter to me." For a split second, she looked almost vulnerable. Then, as if realizing it, she grinned, slipping back into her usual confidence. "Well, of course I do," she said, though her voice was a little breathless. But her fingers curled just a little tighter around mine. And she didn't let go. "And remember," Cecilia murmured, her crimson eyes locking onto mine, "I will do anything you want me to, in any way possible. Use my power as a princess. Use me as a tool. Wield me however you see fit. Just keep me by your side, and be mine. If you do that, I'll give you everything." There was no hesitation in her words. No doubt. Just pure, unwavering devotion. I exhaled softly. "All I want from you is you," I whispered. "If you give me that, I'll be satisfied." Her lips curled upward. "Along with 3 others," she quipped. I didn't retort. Couldn't really. There was nothing to argue against. Instead, I shifted gears. "If I ask for a favor, will you grant it?" "Yes," she said instantly, her voice quick, eager. "What do you want? A noble title? Money? An artifact? Or me?" I met her gaze. "I want you to monitor Jack Blazespout's movements, particularly toward the Springshaper family." Cecilia tilted her head slightly. "Are you worried about Rose?" I nodded. She clicked her tongue. "But Jack, he seems like a normal high noble kid. A genius. Sure. But nothing special like you." My eyes narrowed slightly. Even Cecilia, sharp, perceptive Cecilia, was fooled by him. Jack's ability to hide his true nature wasn't just effective. It was masterful. "Just do this for me, okay?" I said. Cecilia studied me for a moment before grinning. "All right. But only if you do something for me in return." I sighed. "What do you want?" Her lips parted in a slow, teasing smile. "Kiss me. For an hour." I opened my mouth to retort, but my gaze betrayed me, flickering just slightly to her lips. Damn it. Cecilia was stunning. Not just in a regal, refined way, but in a seductive, almost dangerous way. Her red lips, curved in amusement, were a trap, and she knew it. "I want to put my lipstick all over you," she whispered as the dance slowed. I swallowed. Then I grabbed her wrist. Cecilia let out a thrilled giggle as I pulled her off the dance floor, her arm linking through mine as we moved. "Oh, I never thought I'd see you like this," she teased as I led her into a private room, locking the door behind us. The moment it shut, I turned and pushed her onto the couch, standing over her. She lay there, eyes alight with mischief, lips slightly parted. I exhaled. Some people thought being surrounded by beautiful women was a dream. But when those women were insanely flirty, relentlessly persistent, and completely unafraid of getting what they wanted, it was hell. Because at the end of the day, damn it, I was still a guy. Drowning in success, are we? Luna quipped in my mind. Seriously, what the hell is wrong with you, you damn Cheelin? I shot back, my patience thinning. She just laughed. But I didn't have time to argue. Because right now, I was too busy kissing Cecilia. Her lips were warm, soft, and utterly relentless. The moment we parted, she was already tugging at my collar, her fingers twisting in the fabric like she had no intention of letting go. Her crimson eyes, always sharp and teasing, were now hazy with something else. Her cheeks were flushed, her breath slightly uneven. And yet, she still smirked. "Giving in, Arthur?" I smirked back. "What do you think? You really think you can handle an hour of me?" Before she could respond, I pulled her in again. And this time, I didn't hold back. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was okay to let loose once in a while. Chapter 283. His lips left mine just as the last of my breath slipped away, leaving me gasping for air in the dimly lit room. Time seemed to stretch and contract simultaneously, the world narrowing to just the two of us. I exhaled sharply, my chest rising and falling with each uneven breath, my head light from more than just the lack of oxygen. Through my hazy vision, I met Arthur's gaze. Smug, unchallenged, and far too damn handsome for his own good. The faint light caught the sharp angles of his face, casting shadows that only enhanced his allure. He mused, grinning down at me, one eyebrow arched in that infuriatingly perfect way. I thought you were confident, princess? Damn him. I swallowed hard, trying to regain some semblance of composure. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, my fingers twitching in his grip, betraying the effect he had on me. The cool silk of the couch beneath me contrasted with the heat radiating from where our bodies touched. Because he had me pinned. Our fingers interlocked, his weight holding me firmly in place, his presence everywhere. Surrounding me, consuming me. The scent of his cologne mingled with something uniquely him, making it impossible to think clearly. But this was new. A side of him I hadn't expected, hadn't even imagined in my most secret thoughts. The perfect, composed royal advisor was gone, replaced by something raw and unrestrained. It's only been 30 minutes, you know? He murmured, voice dipping just enough to make my stomach twist into 1,000 knots. His grip tightened slightly, just enough to send a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. My breath caught as his eyes darkened, pupils dilating until there was just a thin ring of azure surrounding endless black. I'm not done with you yet. Those 6 words hung in the air between us, weighted with promise. I sucked in a breath, my heart hammering against my ribs so loudly I was certain he could hear it. My mind scrambled for something, anything, to say that wouldn't reveal just how much power he held over me in that moment. But all I could do was stare at him, transfixed. This dominant side of Arthur. This was unexpected. And yet, I found myself liking it. A little too much. The realization should have frightened me. I, who had spent my entire life fighting for control, for autonomy in a world that sought to dictate my every move. Instead, I felt myself melting into his touch, surrendering in a way I'd never allowed myself before. How do you feel? Arthur's voice dipped low, husky with desire, his breath warm against my ear, sending an electric shiver down my spine that seemed to ignite every nerve ending along the way. Before I could answer, his lips brushed my cheek, soft, teasing, deliberate, the ghost of a touch that promised more. Our eyes locked. In that moment, I saw something shift in his gaze. Vulnerability beneath the confidence. A question beneath the demand. He was giving me a choice even now, and I chose him. My hand moved to the nape of his neck, fingers threading through the silken strands of his hair, pulling him closer. And then we kissed again. This time there was nothing tentative about it. His lips claimed mine with a hunger that matched my own, stealing my breath and my thoughts in equal measure. The world dissolved around us, reality narrowing to the points where our bodies connected. Then the door slid open with a soft whoosh. Arthur shifted instantly, his body shielding mine from view. A protective gesture that sent a flutter through my chest that had nothing to do with our interrupted kiss. Get out. I'm busy. His tone was calm, almost indifferent, like he wasn't currently pinning a princess to a couch. His lips still tingling from mine, his hair mussed from my fingers. The steel in his voice left no room for argument or explanation. Whoever it was didn't hesitate. The door shut again just as quickly as it had opened, followed by hurried footsteps receding down the hallway. I exhaled sharply, suddenly aware of how this would look if word got out. My reputation, already the subject of endless court gossip, would be in tatters. Who was that? Some random noble. Arthur barely spared it a thought, dismissing the intrusion as inconsequential. His attention slid back to me like I was the only thing in the room that mattered, the only thing in the entire mansion worthy of his focus. No one important. I opened my mouth to say something. Focus on me, he murmured, cutting me off as he kissed me again. His fingers skimmed my jaw, tilting my head just enough to deepen it, to make me forget what I was about to say. His thumb traced the outline of my bottom lip, a gentle contrast to the intensity of his gaze. When we finally broke apart, his lips curled into a taunting grin, eyes glittering with challenge and amusement. "Didn't you say you wanted to get your lipstick all over me?" He raised an eyebrow, his voice dropping to that register that seemed to resonate directly with my pulse. "Is the princess chickening out now?" A slow heat crept up my neck, spreading across my cheeks in what I knew was a telling blush. The reminder of my earlier boldness, my teasing promise made in a moment of daring, now returned as a challenge. I narrowed my eyes before wrapping an arm around his neck, pulling him in close enough to feel his heart racing against mine. Two could play at this game. "Chickening out?" I whispered against his lips, letting my breath mingle with his. "Do you think that's possible, Nightingale?" The nickname, my private name for him, derived from the lullabies he used to sing when we were children, slipped out unbidden. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, nostalgia, desire, before his expression settled into one of approval. Arthur chuckled, the sound vibrating through his chest and into mine. "Good." And then we kissed again, and again, and again. Time blurred, the minutes melting into each other like watercolors on canvas. The world outside our alcove ceased to exist. The ball, the nobles, the political machinations, all of it faded to nothing. By the time we finally stopped, I was breathless, my lips tingling and swollen, my body warm in a way that had nothing to do with the room temperature. My carefully styled hair had come partially undone, strands falling loosely around my face. Arthur leaned back slightly, examining me with undisguised satisfaction before smirking. One hand remained at my waist, the other idly playing with a strand of my hair. "Well, 1 hour is up." He dragged a lazy finger over my lips, his smirk widening as he surveyed his handiwork. "I think I ended up with more lipstick on me than you did." My face flamed as I took in his appearance. At his completely ruined lips, the smudged red a stark contrast against his usual impeccable composure. His collar was askew, and there was a distinct mark just visible at the edge of his jawline. "You were different?" I muttered, smoothing my dress with trembling fingers. Arthur exhaled through his nose, a soft sound somewhere between amusement and confession. "I can't control myself all the time around you he admitted, voice light but laced with meaning that ran deeper than the casual words suggested. And somehow, that single sentence made my face heat even more. The admission that we could break through his carefully maintained control felt more intimate than the physical acts themselves. "So you won't control yourself?" I asked, hearing the hopeful note in my voice and unable to disguise it. "Not as much," he exhaled, running a hand through his disheveled hair. His expression softened, becoming more thoughtful. I realized just how self-centered I had been. Sort of. A shadow of vulnerability crossed his face, gone almost before I could register it. "Anyway, I will be proper now, so continue to be mine." His azure gaze dug into me as he caressed my cheek, his touch gentle now, reverent almost. The smile on his face made my heart race as I gulped, caught between the desire to maintain this intimacy and the awareness of our responsibilities waiting beyond the door. Then I smiled, allowing myself this moment of honesty, of openness. "I want that more than you," I said as I hugged him, breathing in his scent, committing this moment to memory. The solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against my ear, a counterpoint to the chaos of my own emotions. "I know," he said simply, the words rumbling through his chest. His arms tightened around me briefly before we both got up, the practical reality of our situation reasserting itself. I glanced at the time on my phone, noting with surprise how much time had passed. "The event is probably about to end now," I said as he nodded, already straightening his clothing with practiced efficiency. I turned toward the small mirror on the wall, assessing the damage. My lipstick was beyond salvation, my hair falling in loose waves where it had escaped its pins. I looked, thoroughly kissed. Arthur appeared behind me in the reflection, his eyes meeting mine. The intensity in them made my breath catch all over again. His fingers brushed mine, a brief touch filled with promise before he stepped back. After you, princess. Chapter 284. Wow, I never imagined you had that in you. Luna mused in my mind as I walked with Cecilia. Her tone was half amused, half impressed. Is that what happens when you let go? Damn. I was worried your harem was going to drain you, but honestly, they might not even be able to keep up with you. God, Luna. Shut up, I groaned. Jokes aside, she continued, completely ignoring me. Now you can actually assert yourself, dominate, conquer, expand. Take more harem members, Arthur. Take over the world. Luna, y suer. My plan is solid, she pressed on, undeterred. We've got Rose, Cecilia, Rachel, Serafina, Reika, and... Why is Reika even on the list? I interrupted, exasperated. I don't like her like that. She's pretty though, right? So, don't you want her? No. Silence. Then Luna clicked her tongue. TSK. Wasteful. I sighed, tuning her out as she continued to ramble about missed opportunities and expanding my empire. She had become a lot more talkative lately. Before, she only ever spoke when something specifically caught her interest, usually battle-related. But now, she initiated most of our conversations. It was a sign that she was more comfortable with me, more attached, which was great, but it was also very, very annoying. You seem distracted, Cecilia noted, her crimson eyes flicking to me with curiosity. I sighed. It's nothing. Oh, she arched an eyebrow. Is it a secret you can't tell me? That made me pause. I met her gaze, reading the unspoken challenge in it. No, I said simply. If you want to know, ask me. Luna was a secret to the world because right now, I was still too weak to handle the weight of being labeled the future emperor of the world, which everyone would assume since I had Luna. But not to Cecilia. Not to the three others, either. They were the only ones I trusted with everything. Cecilia tilted her head, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. Then tell me. You really don't hold back, do you? I murmured. Of course not. What kind of princess reigns in her curiosity? I shook my head but pulled her closer, lowering my voice as I leaned in. Then, I whispered into her ear, words wrapped in mana, ensuring no one else would ever hear them. Her body tensed. Then her eyes widened, flickering up to meet mine. And then, she grinned. No wonder, she mused, amusement laced with something sharper. It all makes sense now. Are you planning to tell the others? If they wish to know, I said. This isn't something I want to hide from any of you. Cecilia tilted her head, studying me. You trust us that much? Her voice was quieter now. Thanks, Arthur, for trusting me, despite everything at the beginning. I smirked. Don't worry, I'll get my revenge. Her eyes narrowed. Oh? And how exactly? I leaned in just slightly, just enough to make her breath hitch. Wait and see, princess. Before Cecilia could retort, a soft glow caught my attention. Right between us, a blue rose sprouted from the ground, blooming with an ethereal shimmer. Its petals unfurled like liquid sapphire, glowing faintly against the ambient lighting of the ballroom. I sighed. Of course. I turned my head just in time to see Rose approaching. Her auburn hair flowing behind her, her eyes, normally warm, now narrowed in playful annoyance. She stopped right in front of us, crossing her arms as she pouted. Arthur. Rose. You've been hogging him, she accused Cecilia, flicking her gaze toward her before looking back at me. I let you have the dance. I even let you disappear together. But now, she stepped closer, reaching out and taking my hand firmly, her fingers curling around mine. You're spending time with me now. Cecilia exhaled in amusement. Oh? Possessive, are we? Rose lifted her chin. I share, but I also claim. Cecilia smirked. Fair enough. I sighed again, but I didn't resist as Rose gently but purposefully pulled me away from Cecilia. Honestly, Arthur, she muttered as she led me toward the balcony. away from the swirling crowd. You need to prioritize better. Me first. I let her drag me along, my lips twitching into a smirk. And here I thought you weren't the jealous type. Rose glanced over her shoulder, her brown eyes glinting. I'm not. Then, she squeezed my hand just a little tighter. But you're mine too, Arthur. So act like it. Don't worry, I didn't forget, I murmured, voice low as I leaned in just slightly. You're mine, Rose. I will never let you go. Her breath hitched. For a moment, she just stared at me, her brown eyes wide, shimmering under the soft glow of the ballroom lights. Then, a warm flush crept up her cheeks, and her lips curled into something between a smirk and a genuine, unguarded smile. Looks like I got myself a possessive man, she teased. But there was no mistaking the happiness in her voice. I squeezed her hand. You're okay with that? She bit her lip. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. I grinned. Then that's all that matters. She exhaled softly before shaking her head, the amusement never leaving her face. Anyway, the event is over. I nodded. Then, let's go somewhere, I said smoothly. Her brow arched. My father's home, Arthur. I chuckled, shaking my head. Relax. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I just want to show you something cool. Cool? The word sounded foreign on her tongue, a commoner's slang that didn't quite fit with her aristocratic upbringing. Ouroboros. Her expression shifted slightly. Curiosity sparked in her eyes, brightening them with renewed interest. Your guild. I nodded, watching as she processed the invitation, weighing her curiosity against propriety. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut in, smooth as silk and just as luxurious. Wait, you're going to Ouroboros? Cecilia strolled over, her signature smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She moved with effortless grace, as if the very air parted to accommodate her passage. You can come too, if you want, I said, extending the invitation naturally, watching as something complex flickered across Rose's features. Cecilia sighed dramatically, the sound theatrical yet somehow sincere. Tempting, but no can do. I've got some Princess duties to handle. Boring politics and all that nonsense. She flicked an invisible speck from her sleeve. The Eastern Alliance delegation is pushing for renegotiation of the maritime treaties. Father expects me to smooth things over. Responsibilities, huh? I said, understanding the weight behind her casual dismissal. Yeah. She waved me off, the gesture imperial and dismissive. Then, without warning, she grabbed my tie, tugged me down slightly, and placed a quick kiss on my cheek, the touch of her lips leaving a lingering warmth. Have fun with your guild, Arthur. I'll be busy keeping this empire from falling apart. Then, with a final wink, she turned and sauntered off, the crowd parting for her automatically, years of conditioning making them yield to imperial presence. She slipped into her sleek self-driving car, the door sliding shut behind her with a soft pneumatic hiss. The vehicle pulled away from the estate, disappearing into the cityscape, its lights blending with the thousand others illuminating Avalon's skyline. Rose huffed beside me, a sound of mixed exasperation and reluctant fondness. She's so dramatic. Takes one to know one. She shot me a look, eyes narrowing dangerously, but she didn't argue. Instead, she linked her arm through mine and leaned in slightly, her warmth a pleasant contrast to the cool night air. All right then. Show me this guild of yours, Mr. Nightingale. I smirked, feeling a surge of anticipation at the thought of introducing Rose to that other part of my life, that sanctuary away from imperial politics and noble machinations. With pleasure. We stepped outside, the grand facade of the imperial palace rising behind us, its spires reaching toward the star-studded sky. A few moments later, Rose's self-driving car arrived, its sleek design marking it as a luxury model reserved for the highest echelons of society. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and we climbed in, settling into the plush interior. The car's AI greeted us with a respectful tone, awaiting instructions. I glanced at Rose as the car took off, gliding smoothly into the traffic flow. She was watching the view, the soft glow of Avalon reflecting in her eyes, turning them into pools of liquid amber. The technological marvels of the city, the floating gardens, the anti-gravity platforms, all captured in her gaze. She looked excited, her earlier possessiveness giving way to genuine curiosity. And as we moved deeper into the city, toward the hidden headquarters of Ouroboros, I found myself anticipating her reaction, wanting to share this part of myself with her. Chapter 285. Arthur and I stood before a towering structure, sleek and imposing, the very image of ambition made tangible. The building rose at least 30 stories high, its obsidian-like exterior reflecting the city lights in mesmerizing patterns. Above us, emblazoned on the facade, was the unmistakable symbol of a black serpent devouring its own tail, a sigil as ancient as time itself. Ouroboros, a symbol of infinity, of eternal cycles, and of unrelenting ambition. The emblem pulsed with a subtle blue glow, visible even against the night sky of Avalon. Mana-infused, no doubt, a little touch of magic to complement the technological marvel of the structure itself. Around us, the business district hummed with the late-night activity typical of a city that never truly slept. Fitting, I mused, my eyes tracing the sleek metallic curves of the insignia. The emblem seemed alive somehow, the eternal snake forever consuming itself, forever renewing. Arthur glanced at me, his lips curling into a knowing smirk that made my heart flutter traitorously. Well, I do plan for this guild to sit on the throne, after all. I blinked, the casual way he mentioned something so monumental catching me off guard. The throne. I turned to him fully, my heart skipping slightly at the weight behind his words. The night breeze tugged at loose strands of my hair as I studied his face. You don't mean that throne? He met my gaze evenly, azure eyes steady in the glow of the city lights. You know I do. His voice was steady, calm, assured, as if claiming the guild throne, the position coveted by thousands of guilds across all continents, was simply a matter of time rather than possibility. And somehow, standing there with him, the night air cool against my skin and his confidence radiating like a tangible force, I believed him. A security scanner hummed softly as we approached the entrance, recognizing Arthur immediately. The massive glass doors slid open with barely a whisper, revealing the guild's interior. A receptionist greeted us as we stepped inside, bowing with clear respect. She was young, perhaps our age, with sharp features and alert eyes that missed nothing. "Welcome back, Guild Master Nightingale," she said, her voice professionally pleasant. Then, with a curious glance at me, "And welcome to Ouroboros, Lady Leopold." I tried not to show my surprise at being recognized. Arthur returned a polite nod before leading me further in, his hand resting lightly against the small of my back, guiding me. "Everyone knows who you are, Rose," he murmured, correctly interpreting my reaction. "Duke Leopold's daughter, heir to Vauquert Industries. Not to mention..." His voice dropped lower. "Mine." Heat crept up my neck at the possessive note in his voice, but I kept my composure. "Presumptuous, aren't you?" He merely chuckled in response, the sound sending a pleasant shiver down my spine. The interior was pristine. All clean lines, polished steel, and softly glowing blue holo displays showcasing real-time guild activity. The air buzzed faintly with the hum of high-end tech, monitoring everything: missions, finances, logistics. Translucent screens showed maps of various territories, mission areas marked in red, blue, and green depending on their status. "Not many members around," Arthur remarked as we moved through the surprisingly empty halls. Our footsteps echoed slightly against the polished floor. "Most are out on raids. We need victories to establish ourselves, especially since we're still just a bronze-rank guild." "Makes sense," I replied, trailing my fingers along a nearby railing, feeling the cool metal beneath my touch. Every guild, no matter its potential, had to prove itself. It was the way of things, meritocracy in its purest form. Bronze to silver, silver to gold, and then the platinum ranks, Arthur finished, a gleam in his eye, where the real power begins. We passed several training rooms, their doors ajar to reveal state-of-the-art simulation equipment. One room contained what looked like a miniature forest, complete with holographic monsters prowling between trees. Another held a desert landscape, the simulated heat almost palpable even from the doorway. Impressive tech, I noted, genuinely surprised. This is extensive for a bronze guild. Arthur's lips twitched. I have investors. Clearly, I murmured, wondering just who had backed him. This level of technology wasn't cheap, wasn't even accessible to most mid-tier guilds. Someone with serious connections had put their faith in Arthur Nightingale. We entered an elevator at the end of the hall, its interior lined with mirrors that reflected us infinitely. Another subtle nod to the guild's namesake. Arthur pressed his palm against a scanner, and the elevator began its smooth ascent. The upper floors are administrative, he explained as we rose. My office, meeting rooms, strategy planning. Lower levels are for training, equipment, and common areas for members. I nodded, watching the floor numbers tick upward. And the basement levels? His eyes met mine in the mirrored wall. What makes you think there are basement levels? I smiled. There always are. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Perhaps someday I'll show you. Soon we reached the top floor. The elevator doors opened silently, revealing a spacious corridor adorned with subtle art pieces, most featuring the guild's emblem in various artistic interpretations. Outside what was clearly Arthur's office, a man stood waiting. Tall, neatly dressed, and exuding quiet efficiency, he turned toward us as we approached. He was older than us, perhaps in his late 20s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate a dozen variables at once. His posture was perfect, his attire impeccable. Everything about him screamed precision. Guild Master, he greeted Arthur with a slight bow. Then, with the same measured politeness, Lady Rose. Good day, Elias. Arthur smiled, his tone lighter. The familiarity in his voice suggested a relationship built on mutual respect. Everything going well? As expected, Elias Vance replied smoothly, extending a tablet for Arthur to review. The Eastern Raid Team reported successful completion of their mission. Minimal injuries, maximum efficiency. The Western team encountered some complications, but nothing beyond their capabilities. There was competence in his tone. No wasted words.
No hesitación.
Just pure, distilled efficiency. The financial projections for this quarter are promising, he continued. If current trends hold, we'll see a 27% increase in revenue compared to our initial forecasts. Arthur nodded, scanning the tablet before handing it back. And the Blackwater contract? Secured this morning, Elias confirmed. Terms exactly as you specified. I won't keep you long, he added, clearly sensing Arthur's desire to show me around without an audience. Arthur nodded. Appreciate it. With that, Elias bowed once more and departed, his footsteps fading as he walked toward another section of the floor. We stepped into Arthur's office, a space that was minimalistic yet purposeful. A large desk fashioned from some dark, polished wood dominated one side, complete with an advanced holo display currently in sleep mode. A sleek seating area occupied another corner, with comfortable-looking chairs arranged around a low table. The walls were lined with tactical maps and documents, some physical and others projected onto special surfaces. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Avalon's skyline, the city sprawling beneath us like a carpet of light and shadow. The office itself was illuminated by ambient lighting that seemed to have no specific source, casting everything in a soft, even glow. As I took in the room, Arthur leaned back against his desk and crossed his arms, watching me with that particular intensity that always made my skin tingle. That was Elias Vance, he explained casually. My secretary. He runs most of the guild since I'm busy, getting stronger, dealing with the academy, and not dying. I raised an eyebrow, moving to examine a particularly intricate map of the Eastern Territories pinned to one wall. And Callie, vice leader, he shrugged. But she's busy too, so Elias does most of the actual work. I nodded, impressed despite myself. If he's running an entire bronze rank guild mostly on his own, he must be incredibly competent. Oh, he is, Arthur confirmed, watching as I traced the border of a disputed territory with my fingertip. He's not much of a fighter, but his brain? Easily worth an army. I turned, leaning against the wall and crossing my arms to mirror his posture. Where did you find someone like that? He found me, actually, Arthur admitted. Approached me after I founded the guild. Said he saw potential and wanted to be part of it from the ground up. Smart man, I mused. High risk, but potentially high reward. Arthur's eyes gleamed. Very smart. Oxford educated. Could have worked anywhere, but chose a fledgling guild instead. I wandered toward the window, gazing out at the city. Avalon at night was truly spectacular. A testament to human ingenuity and magical advancement. From this height, I could see the floating gardens in the distance, their glowing flora illuminating the night like earthbound stars. Did you bring me just to show me this? I asked, turning back to face him. Because, well, this isn't much of a tour to begin with. Of course not, Arthur murmured as he pushed away from his desk and sank into his chair, a sleek, high-backed thing that looked both comfortable and imposing. He pressed something on his desk, and the windows immediately tinted darker, offering us privacy from any potential observers in neighboring buildings. I barely had time to tilt my head before he extended a hand toward me, an unmistakable invitation in his eyes. Come here, he said softly. I hesitated for just a moment, feeling a familiar flutter in my chest. Then I crossed the distance between us, allowing him to pull me in, effortlessly guiding me onto his lap. Arthur, I started, my voice faltering as warmth flooded my face. The situation felt both intimate and professional in a way that was hard to reconcile. Shoo! He whispered against my ear, his breath tickling my skin. I want to show you something, okay? Chapter 286. I nodded, though focusing was becoming an issue. His arms curled around me, one resting lightly against my waist, the other reaching for his desk. Every movement, every slight shift, sent a new wave of awareness through me. I could feel his breath against my neck, his chest, firm and steady, pressed against my back. The subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, enveloped me. Snap out of it, Rose! I scolded myself, shutting my eyes for a second to recenter. I was Marquis Springshaper's daughter, heir to Vockert Industries. I couldn't be reduced to a flustered schoolgirl just because Arthur Nightingale had pulled me onto his lap. Except, apparently, I could. Then, a bright blue glow flooded my vision. The holographic display came to life, expanding around us in intricate layers of data, graphs, and schematics. Three-dimensional projections filled the air, rotating slowly to showcase complex logistics chains, resource allocation models, and what appeared to be geological surveys. What is this? I whispered, momentarily stunned by the sheer magnitude of information on the screen. My business instincts kicked in immediately, eyes darting from projection to projection, trying to piece together the overall picture. Something I need your help with, Arthur murmured, his voice calm, too calm, considering the classified nature of what I was seeing. This wasn't just guild business. This was something far more ambitious. His arm tightened slightly around my stomach, drawing me in as he navigated the hollow display with his free hand, bringing certain projections forward while minimizing others. I barely registered his movements. My attention was locked on the floating projections before me, particularly on what appeared to be a detailed map of the Ashen Territories, the most resource-rich and politically volatile region in the eastern continent. I hesitated, piecing together the fragmented data, business acumen kicking in as I recognized supply chain models and distribution networks that would make even my father raise an eyebrow in appreciation. You want Vockert's help with this? Arthur nodded, his chin brushing against my shoulder with the movement. I frowned, mind racing as I processed the implications. Arthur, shouldn't a bigger guild be handling something like this? Technically, yes, he admitted, fingers tapping the interface with precise control, bringing up another layer of data. This one showing projected profit margins that were, frankly, staggering. But I don't want to give it up. I turned my head slightly to look at him, our faces now inches apart. Give it up. His azure eyes gleamed with quiet conviction. If I take this to a larger guild, sure, they'd handle it. But then they'd own it. The profits, the connections, the influence, it would all go to them. His voice hardened slightly. And I'd just be the junior member who brought them a good lead. I studied him for a moment, understanding dawning. This wasn't just about business. This was about establishing himself, about creating a foundation solid enough to support his seemingly impossible ambitions. But still, it's dangerous, I quipped, my eyes scanning the massive projection before us, focusing on the statistical models that predicted various risk factors. The Ashen Territories are practically a war zone. And how exactly do you plan on getting access to this place in the first place? Arthur chuckled, the sound low and annoyingly confident. Did you forget about Rachel? Of course. With her, I don't need to worry about access, he continued. I just need Vachert's help with the processing and distribution. I tapped my fingers against the armrest of his chair, considering his words, the complex business proposal taking shape in my mind. You're not targeting the West? You could use Callie's connections.
Callie Maelkit.
Daughter of the one of Western continent's most powerful families. The fact that Arthur had somehow managed to recruit her as his guild's vice leader was still something that boggled my mind. West is locked down when it comes to this, he said, shaking his head, bringing up yet another projection that showed failed business ventures in the region. That's the reason Vachert hasn't been able to break into that continent. Isn't it? I sighed. He was right. The Western continent, ruled by necromancers and the infamous Ashbluff family, was a fortress, nearly impenetrable when it came to foreign business interests. My father's company, Vachert, had tried to expand there multiple times, but every attempt had been blocked by a combination of protectionist policies and outright hostility. But still, I muttered, chewing on my lower lip, a habit I'd never quite managed to break. If no one else has done this before, doesn't that mean it's too dangerous? Arthur leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered by concerns that would keep most business magnates awake at night. I have a solution. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. Do you now? He smirked, that infuriatingly confident expression that made me want to both kiss him and push him out of his chair. I always have a solution, Rose. But don't worry, this isn't happening now. This is for later. I wanted to show you early because I want to set up a preliminary contract with Vachert for something else. I narrowed my eyes, instantly on alert. When someone pivots like that in a business conversation, it usually means the second proposal is the real aim. Something else. A smaller side project. Go on. I kept my voice neutral, though curiosity piqued my interest. I need a zombie princess.
Iblinka, Sartain ide Mishiart.
A what? Arthur's face remained perfectly neutral, not a hint of humor or uncertainty. A zombie princess. I tilted my head, studying him for a moment, trying to determine if this was some sort of bizarre joke. The term wasn't completely unknown to me. A rare and powerful undead classification in the Western continent. Beings who retained their intelligence and gained significant magical abilities after death. We can't make one, I said slowly, testing the waters. No, he agreed, still frustratingly calm. But we can turn someone into one. I waited, the silence stretching between us like a physical thing. He waited, patient as always when it came to his schemes. Then he continued far too casually. I want Callie to become a zombie princess. I stared at him. I stared at him for a long time, trying to process the sheer audacity of what he was suggesting. Callie Maelkith was the daughter of one of Western continent's most powerful families. A powerful dark MGE in her own right. And Arthur wanted to turn her into an undead being. The political ramifications alone were enough to make my head spin. Not to mention the ethical considerations, the magical requirements, the risks involved. Then I smiled, the expression probably too sweet to be genuine. Arthur? I said, maintaining that sugary tone. It seems my boy has gone completely insane. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. Crazy, huh? He asked as I nodded emphatically. I began to speak, ready to list the dozen reasons why this plan was absolute madness, why it could start an international incident, why it might very well get us all killed. But before I could get another word out, he pulled me in and kissed me, deeply. One hand cradled the back of my neck, the other at my waist, holding me steady as his lips moved against mine with practiced skill. All my carefully prepared arguments dissolved instantly, replaced by a rush of warmth that spread from my lips to the tips of my toes. After a long time of deep kissing, long enough that my thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm, he let me go as I panted, struggling to remember what we'd been discussing. Art, I began again, determined to get back to the topic, to tell him exactly why turning Callie Malekith into a zombie princess was perhaps the worst idea in recorded history. He pulled me in to kiss me again, effectively cutting off my protest. This time his kiss was softer, more teasing, but no less effective at derailing my thoughts. Damn it, I don't want to admit, but this is a good strategy to shut me up, I thought hazily, knowing I should pull away but finding myself entirely unwilling to do so. When he finally released me again, I was breathless, my heart racing and my thoughts in disarray. I pressed a hand against his chest, creating a small space between us. You can't just kiss me every time I'm about to call you out on your ridiculous plans, I said, trying to sound stern despite my flushed cheeks and quickened breathing. Arthur's eyes gleamed with mischief. Can't I? No, I insisted, though my protest lacked conviction. And this plan of yours, it's madness, Arthur. Even if Callie agreed, which I seriously doubt, the process would be dangerous, potentially fatal, and definitely illegal in most jurisdictions. He nodded, as if I'd simply confirmed something he already knew. All true, but necessary. Chapter 287, Phase 1. It seems your thinking is shallow, I said, watching Rose squirm in my lap. Her weight was pleasant against me, a warmth I'd grown increasingly fond of. Shallow? She repeated, tilting her head slightly. A strand of auburn hair fell across her cheek as she frowned. Arthur, I flicked her forehead, making her flinch. She scowled, rubbing the spot with delicate fingers. Am I stupid enough to do what you're thinking, Rose? I hope not, she muttered, her brown eyes locking onto my own, searching for something. Reassurance, perhaps, or the madness she clearly suspected lurked beneath my plans. But then what do you mean by zombie princess? I sighed, leaning back in my chair. The material creaked slightly beneath our combined weight. I suppose I should have phrased it better. Leaning forward, I kissed her forehead before tapping a command into my desk. The holographic interface hummed beneath my fingertips, connecting instantly. Elias, I said smoothly, ask Callie to come to my office. I ended the call before he could respond, knowing he'd handle it with his usual efficiency. The man never wasted time on unnecessary confirmations. Rose opened her mouth to protest again, but I simply pulled her closer, wrapping my arms around her in a way that left no room for argument. She huffed but didn't resist, though I could feel her trying very hard to act annoyed instead of flustered. Her heartbeat quickened against my chest, betraying her. This is completely inappropriate, she muttered, though she made no real attempt to escape. I'm trying to have a serious conversation about your apparently insane plans, and you're just what? I asked innocently, enjoying the way her cheeks colored. You know exactly what, she replied, attempting to sound stern and failing miserably. A few minutes passed, filled with Rose's half-hearted attempts to maintain a professional demeanor while still sitting on my lap. I could practically hear the war between her dignity and her comfort playing out in her head. Then the door slid open with a soft pneumatic hiss. Callie strode in, hands stuffed into the pockets of her dark coat, already exuding the exasperation of someone who had seen too much nonsense in a single lifetime. Her silver hair caught the ambient light, contrasting sharply with the darkness of her attire. She sighed, her eyes still closed as if she could block out whatever inevitable chaos awaited her. What do you want, Arthur? Then, she opened her eyes, deep violet, a trademark of the Ashbluff bloodline. She saw Rose. She saw where Rose was. Her lips curled into a knowing smirk as she leaned against the doorframe. One ankle crossed over the other in a casual pose that somehow still managed to exude aristocratic disdain. Did you summon me just to show off your lovemaking skills? Rose instantly turned red, pushing at my chest with weak, ineffective resistance. We weren't. I wasn't. Of course not, I replied, rolling my eyes. I have a task for you. Callie's smirk didn't fade, but she folded her arms across her chest, her posture shifting from casual amusement to wary interest. What kind of task? I grinned, enjoying the moment before I dropped my little bombshell. Become a zombie princess for me. Callie blinked, the smirk sliding off her face like water off glass. Then, she smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that never quite reached her eyes. The kind of smile that had probably preceded violence in the Ashbluff household for generations. Then, she opened her mouth. What the hell is this bastard saying now? Damn, I thought. Weren't you supposed to be a noble lady? Hey, I know we signed an oath and everything, but that doesn't mean you get to kill me and turn me into some disgusting undead abomination. Callie shouted, jabbing a finger at me as if she were trying to ward off an exorcism. Her voice rose in pitch, echoing slightly in the spacious office. I agree, Rose added, arms crossed. Her brow furrowed into a perfect picture of disapproval. Arthur, what the hell? I sighed, rubbing my temples. Sometimes being surrounded by beautiful women wasn't worth the headache of dealing with their assumptions. God, both of you are dumb. Two sets of eyes blinked at me in perfect unison. Excuse me? Rose and Callie said at the same time, voices equally unimpressed. The stereo effect would have been amusing if I weren't so exasperated. Right, of course they thought they knew what I was talking about. Rose's father ran Vokert, Slatemark Empire's largest necromancer conglomerate, and Callie? Callie was the daughter of one of the most powerful families of the Western continent. If anyone should have known what a zombie princess was, it was them. And yet, they were both completely wrong. Listen, I said, exhaling slowly, trying to gather my patience. Making Callie a zombie princess doesn't mean she has to die. I paused, then smiled. Why would I kill such a good two? Cough cough. I mean such a good person? Callie stared at me flatly, her violet eyes unblinking. You were definitely about to say tool. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said, looking away, suddenly finding the corner of my office fascinating. What exactly do you mean by a zombie princess, then? Rose asked, still looking wary, but I could see curiosity beginning to replace her initial alarm. I mean, I leaned back, propping my feet up on the desk, the picture of casual confidence. Callie gets all the perks: enhanced regeneration, command over the undead, massively increased physical abilities. Without the whole rotting flesh, corpse smell, oops I forgot to breathe, bit. Both of them stared at me, dumbfounded. The silence stretched long enough that I could hear the faint hum of the building's environmental systems. How is that even possible? Rose finally asked, voice laced with skepticism. As the daughter of a necromancy magnate, she knew enough to understand why my proposal should be impossible. I grinned wide and shameless. Well, I said, stretching my arms behind my head. I'm a genius. They both sighed in perfect synchrony, the kind of exhausted sigh that people only make when they've completely given up on receiving a reasonable explanation. So if this is a future plan, why are you bringing it up now? Rose asked, shifting slightly. She tried to move off my lap. Tried. I didn't let go. She flushed deeper as she squirmed, pushing against my arm in a futile attempt to free herself. Arthur, this is serious. Let me go. Cute. Because I can do the first step now, I said casually, tightening my grip just a little to watch her reaction. She froze, her cheeks burning a delicious shade of crimson. Callie, meanwhile, was watching us with the unimpressed look of someone who had witnessed far too much nonsense in far too short a time. Her arms remained firmly crossed, one eyebrow raised. And what exactly is the first step? It won't do much yet, I admitted, finally releasing Rose, who immediately slid off my lap and onto her feet, smoothing her dress with affected dignity. But it'll give you enhanced regeneration and the ability to summon zombies. So you'll get stronger, not by a huge margin, but enough to matter. And, before you ask, no, you won't die, and yes, you'll still be human. Callie's eyes narrowed, suspicion evident in the tightness of her jaw. And you need us for this, why? Because, I said, rising from my chair to pace slowly around my desk, I need to stabilize the process. If I use your gift, Rose's gift, Reika's gift, and mine together, I can balance everything out properly. Rose pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture she'd picked up from her father. And what's stopping you from completely ruining Callie's body? Me, I grinned, pointing a thumb at my chest. Callie scowled, her lips drawing into a thin line. That doesn't fill me with confidence. I ignored her skepticism, knowing she'd agree eventually. Callie was many things, stubborn, violent, occasionally psychopathic, but stupid wasn't one of them. She knew power when she saw it, and this was an opportunity she wouldn't pass up. Instead, I tapped my desk, calling Elias again. Get Reika in here. A few minutes later, the door slid open with a soft whoosh, and a familiar head of violet hair peeked through. You called for me? Reika asked hesitantly, peering inside like she wasn't sure if she was interrupting something questionable. Her eyes, a remarkable shade of amber, scanned the room cautiously. Come in, I said, gesturing her forward. She stepped inside, immediately spotting Callie and giving her a polite bow. Vice leader, she murmured respectfully. Then her gaze flickered to me, and then to Rose. Her cheeks turned red instantly, a lovely compliment to her violet hair. I saw the exact moment she registered the position Rose was in, now standing beside my desk, trying to look composed despite her still flushed face and slightly mussed hair. She looked away quickly, avoiding my eyes like they were some kind of forbidden sight, her entire posture radiating flustered confusion. Rose, of course, only got more embarrassed in response, clearing her throat and focusing intently on straightening an already straight sleeve. I smirked, enjoying their discomfort perhaps more than I should have. All right, Reika, I said, stretching my arms behind my head. Time to get to work. Reika shifted nervously, still not quite meeting anyone's eyes. What kind of work, exactly? We're going to make Callie stronger, I said simply. I need your gift. Understanding dawned on Reika's face, followed immediately by apprehension. My gift? You want me to transcribe a curse? Not just any curse, I clarified. A very specific sequence that I've developed. One that will lay the groundwork for Callie to eventually become a zombie princess. Reika's eyes widened. A zombie? But that's not what you think, I interrupted, holding up a hand. We've already been through this with Rose and Callie. No death involved, no actual undeath. Just the benefits. Chapter 288. Reika looked unconvinced, but she nodded slowly. Her gift, Curse Script, allowed her to transcribe curses directly into a person's body, altering their very essence. This gift was used to temporarily boost mana rank, but it could be used in a different way as well when mixed with Rose's paradox. I'll need your help too, Rose, I said, turning to her. Your paradox gift is essential to create the closed space where reality can be manipulated without outside interference. Rose nodded, her earlier embarrassment giving way to professional interest. Her gift allowed her to create localized pockets where the laws of reality became flexible, malleable to her will. Within those spaces, she could bend causality itself, though the strain of maintaining such distortions limited how far she could push. And my gift? Callie asked, leaning against the wall with forced casualness. What does Dark Embrace contribute to this little experiment? Your connection to Deep Dark, I explained. We're not turning you undead, but we are borrowing from that spectrum of power. Your gift lets you channel and control those energies naturally. It's the perfect conduit. Callie nodded slowly, considering. And your gift? Rose asked, eyes narrowed slightly. How does Lucent Harmony fit into this? I smiled. My gift had always been the least flashy of the four, but perhaps the most essential. I balance everything. Without me, the other three gifts would tear Callie apart. Quite literally. I keep the energies harmonized, ensure they sync instead of conflict. The room fell silent as they all processed what I was suggesting. Using 4 gifts in conjunction wasn't just ambitious, it was practically unheard of. The potential for disaster was enormous. So, I clapped my hands together. Shall we begin? Wait, Rose interjected. Just like that? No preparation, no safety measures. Nothing? I gestured around my office. Why do you think I called you all here? This room is already prepared. I tapped a sequence on my desk, and the lights dimmed slightly as hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing intricate runic arrays etched in luminescent material. The floor beneath us hummed softly as similar patterns activated, creating a complex matrix of magical circuits. I've been planning this for months, I said, allowing myself a small, satisfied smile. The preparations were completed weeks ago. All I needed was to get you 3 in the same place at the same time. Callie whistled, genuinely impressed despite herself. You sneaky bastard. Always, I agreed cheerfully. Rose still looked concerned. And you're absolutely certain this won't harm Callie? As certain as I can be, I said honestly. There's always risk with something this experimental, but I've run the calculations hundreds of times. The probability of success is acceptable. Acceptable? Callie repeated, eyebrow raised. That's not exactly comforting, Rose muttered. It wasn't meant to be, I replied. It was meant to be honest. This is experimental magic on a level few have attempted. There are risks, but the rewards. I turned to Callie. The rewards are worth it. Callie pushed away from the wall, straightening her posture. All right, I'm in. What do I need to do? Stand in the center, I directed, pointing to a circular pattern on the floor that had begun to glow a soft blue. Rose, take the north position. Reka, east. I'll take west. They moved to their positions without further argument, each standing on a glowing marker in the floor. The room's lighting dimmed further as the runic arrays brightened, casting an ethereal blue glow across everyone's features. Rose, begin, I instructed. Create the paradox space. Rose closed her eyes, her face serene with concentration. She extended her hands, palms facing inward as if holding an invisible sphere. The air between her hands shimmered, distorting slightly as reality began to flex under her will. Slowly, the distortion expanded, spreading outward in a perfect sphere until it encompassed the entire ritual space that was now full of blue roses. The air felt heavier, thicker somehow, as if we were suddenly underwater. Sound dampened, and the colors in the room shifted subtly, everything taking on a slightly surreal quality. Perfect, I murmured. Reka, prepare your script. Reka nodded, raising her hands. Her fingertips began to glow with amber light, intricate symbols appearing in the air before her like burning calligraphy. She moved with practiced precision, each gesture creating new characters that floated and swirled around her. Use the pattern I showed you, I reminded her. Focus on integration, not dominance. She nodded again, her face a mask of concentration as she continued to write in the air, creating a complex lattice of cursed script. The symbols floated toward Callie, orbiting her slowly, waiting to be inscribed. Callie, I said, channel your gift. Draw on deep dark, but don't shape it. Just let it flow. Callie closed her eyes, her breathing slowing. A subtle darkness seemed to gather around her, not visible exactly, but perceptible as a weight, a gravitational pull that wasn't physical. The temperature around her dropped slightly, frost forming on the floor at her feet. Good, I encouraged. Now hold it steady. Finally, I activated my own gift. Lucent harmony spread from my body like ripples in a pond, invisible but tangible. Where it touched the other's energies, it soothed them, aligned them, preventing the natural rejection that would occur when different magical forces interacted. Now, I commanded. Rose, constrict the paradox. Reika, inscribe the script. Kali, cycle the energy through your core. They moved in perfect synchrony, as if we'd practiced this 100 times instead of never before. Rose's hands drew closer together, compressing the paradox space, intensifying its effects. Reality bent further, the laws of physics becoming suggestions rather than rules. Reika's floating script accelerated, spinning faster around Kali before suddenly diving inward, each symbol sinking beneath her skin like ink in water. Where they entered, brief lines of amber light traced across her body before fading. Kali gasped as the script entered her back arching slightly. The death energy she'd gathered compressed, forced through her magical core like water through a filter, changing as it moved. I intensified my gift, watching carefully for any signs of rejection or instability. This was the critical moment, where the components either harmonized or conflicted. For a heartbeat, I felt resistance, the various energies struggling against each other. Then my gift prevailed, smoothing the interactions, creating bridges where barriers tried to form. The runic arrays in the room flared brightly, then dimmed to a steady pulse, synchronizing with Kali's heartbeat. The frost at her feet spread outward, covering the floor in delicate crystalline patterns. Almost there, I said, voice tight with concentration. Rose, release the paradox gradually. Reika, anchor the script. Rose slowly pulled her hands apart, the distortion in reality fading progressively rather than all at once. Reika made one final gesture, her fingers tracing a complex seal in the air that seemed to sink into Kali's chest, directly over her heart. As the paradox space dissolved completely, Kali dropped to one knee, breathing heavily. The frost around her melted instantly as normal reality reasserted itself. Kali! Reika rushed forward, concern evident on her face. I'm fine, Kali said, waving her off. Just intense. She pushed herself back to her feet, swaying slightly before steadying. Did it work? In answer, I picked up a letter opener from my desk and tossed it to her. Check. She caught it deftly, understanding immediately. Without hesitation, she dragged the blade across her palm, opening a shallow cut. Blood welled for a moment. Then the wound closed before our eyes, healing in seconds. Enhanced regeneration, I confirmed. And the other abilities should manifest soon. You'll need to practice, learn to control them. Kali flexed her hand, a slow smile spreading across her face. Not bad, Nightingale. Not bad at all. Rose approached me, her expression a mix of amazement and lingering concern. That was incredible. I've never seen gifts used in conjunction like that before. Few have, I replied, allowing myself a moment of pride. It takes compatible gifts and precise control. Most attempts end in disaster. But not yours, she said, studying me with new eyes. Not mine, I agreed. The unspoken question hung between us. How had I known it would work? How had I calculated the exact pattern needed to achieve this transformation? But Rose was too clever to ask directly. Instead, she simply nodded, filing away this new piece of the puzzle that was Arthur Nightingale. So what's the next step? Kali asked, examining her hand with fascination. You said this was just the beginning. It is, I confirmed. The full transformation will require several more procedures, each more complex than the last. But today was the foundation, and it was successful. Well, I clapped my hands together, breaking the moment. I think we're done for today. Kali, rest. Your body needs time to adjust. Reika, excellent work with the script. Precise as always. They both nodded, moving toward the door. Kali paused before exiting, glancing back at me. Arthur, she said, her voice uncharacteristically serious. Thank you. I nodded once, acknowledging the rare display of gratitude. She flashed a quick smile, then disappeared through the doorway, Reika following close behind. As the door slid shut, Rose turned to me, arms crossed, a pout on her face. I smiled, patting my lap invitingly. After a moment's hesitation, she relented, allowing me to pull her back into her previous position. I leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her neck before whispering in her ear. "Not satisfied?" She shivered, though whether from my touch or my words, I couldn't tell. "You're impossible," she murmured, though there was no real reproach in her voice. "I prefer ambitious," I countered, echoing our earlier conversation. Her cheeks colored slightly. "Arthur, I should go. My father will be wondering where I am." "Yet you don't want to." "Let him wonder," I murmured, leaning closer. "I'm not done with you yet." Before she could protest further, I kissed her, swallowing whatever objection she might have made. She resisted for approximately half a second before melting against me, her arms sliding around my neck. As her lips moved against mine, I couldn't help but smile into the kiss. Phase 1 of Zombie Princess Plan was complete. Chapter 289, Prelude to Third Mission. My fall break ended soon after we finished Phase 1 of my Zombie Princess Plan, which meant it was time to return to Mythos Academy. Technically, I had been absent for over 5 weeks, thanks to my inconvenient coma following the second mission. My extended disappearance wasn't exactly subtle, so before classes resumed, I had one more thing to take care of. A meeting with Headmaster Eva Lopez. So now, I found myself sitting across from the most powerful woman in Mythos Academy, her violet eyes fixed on me with an expression somewhere between exasperation and amusement. Her office was surprisingly minimalist. A large desk of polished oak, walls lined with books, and a massive window overlooking the academy grounds. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the campus. "Arthur," she said, rubbing her temples with slender fingers. "Why does it feel like something insane always happens around you?" I blinked, feigning innocence. "Excuse me," she sighed, leaning back in her chair. The leather creaked softly as she moved. "Look, I'm not blaming you. I'm not evil," she added dryly. "But you have a way of turning what should be straightforward missions into something dangerous." I kept my face neutral, a carefully cultivated blank mask that revealed nothing of my thoughts. She didn't buy it, not for a second. Her eyes narrowed slightly, seeing through the facade with the ease of someone who had been reading people for decades. "Anyway," she continued, absently adjusting one of the silver bangles on her wrist, "the Empire has decided to reward you for your overachievement. Since you played a major role in taking down the bishop, they want to give you a medal for merit. And because of that, we've give you a perfect score for your second mission. Can't have the world laughing at us now, can we?" The irony in her voice was unmistakable. Politics and appearances, always taking precedence over reality. "How generous," I said, though I wasn't exactly complaining. A perfect score was a perfect score, regardless of how it was earned. "Don't push your luck," she said flatly, her violet eyes hardening for just a moment. "And for the love of all things holy, try not to cause another international incident during the third mission. You are not ready to be fighting the cults." The air in the room seemed to tighten as she said the word, as if the very atmosphere recoiled from it. Cults. I understood the weight behind it. Everyone did. The 5 organizations that stood at the pinnacle of humanity's enemies, each one dedicated to a different aspect of the miasma that threatened to consume our world. "You know the history of the world, right?" she asked, her voice softer but no less firm. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk, her expression suddenly more serious. I nodded. "There were 2 points in history where humanity had the upper hand," she said, her gaze distant, as if seeing through time itself. "Where we were on the verge of wiping out the miasmic races for good." Her violet eyes darkened, clouded with the weight of a history that had shaped our entire civilization. The first was before the Industrial Revolution in the late 17th century. We were winning. Humanity had surpassed its enemies and was on track to eradicate them completely. And then, I didn't need her to finish. This was a story carved into the consciousness of every person who fought against the darkness. "The Crimson Night happened," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. She nodded grimly, a strand of her silver hair falling across her face. She tucked it back absently, her expression haunted. The crimson night. A single day when, as the sun left each continent, everything changed. Entire cities were wiped off the map. Governments fell. And 5 new powers emerged from the darkness. The rise of the 5 cults. The vampire cult in the central continent, now the Red Chalice. The demon cult in the eastern continent, now the Order of the Fallen Flame. The beast cult in the southern continent, now the Abyssal Kin. The ogre cult in the western continent, now the Savage Communion. The shadow cult in the northern continent, now the Umbervale Covenant. Eva continued, turning back to face me. The second time was under Liam Kagu. The golden age of humanity. The world had never been stronger. The eastern continent alone was enough to hold off 2 of the cults at the same time. I knew the story well. Everyone did. It was the closest humanity had come to victory in centuries. Back in the 19th century, the demon cult had controlled the eastern continent, while the vampire cult held sway in the central continent. But the eastern continent was different. Stronger. They didn't just resist the cults, they crushed them. The demon cult, despite all its power, was on the verge of collapse. In a desperate bid for survival, they begged the vampire cult for aid. The vampire cult responded. They crossed the sea to reinforce their allies. And then they got crushed too. Both cults were on the brink of destruction. Until he appeared. Until the heavenly demon rose. A single being whose power tipped the scales, whose very existence changed the course of the war. The details were classified, known only to those with the highest clearance, but the outcome was not. The Golden Age ended, and the 2 cults switched continents, buying enough time to recover. Eva exhaled, rubbing her forehead with a weariness that seemed to age her before my eyes. At least one of the cults was wiped out, right? That's what people still believed. But those who remain, she trailed off, leaving the implications hanging in the air between us. I understood. These were not normal people. They were those who had abandoned their humanity. They were those who worshipped something worse than devils or demons. They had given themselves to the miasma, let it corrupt them from within, transform them into something no longer human. And they sought to do the same to the rest of humanity. What did you think when you faced the bishop, Arthur? Eva asked suddenly, turning back to me with an intensity that was almost physical. I blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. What did I think? High. The power level was too high. Even after Carrie forced him to rush and thus get injured. Even though he hadn't fought me at full power. Even when he was just testing me out of sheer curiosity. The difference was overwhelming. A wall of power so vast it made a mockery of everything I had. Even with Reika's gift, even with pushing Erebus past its limits, even after unlocking my second gift. I had barely survived. A tired bishop. And he had played with me like a cat with a mouse, extending my suffering for his own amusement, testing the limits of my abilities with casual cruelty. The gap between us was humiliating. But so what? I clenched my fist, feeling my nails dig into my palm. In the end, he was just a bishop. There were cardinals above him. And above them, the 5 popes. And above the popes, the true rulers of the miasmic species. Jack Blazespout, Caladros von Noctis, the demon lords. And at the very peak of all evil in this world, the demon overlord. The being whose existence was half legend, half nightmare. The ultimate enemy of humanity. I will win, I said, my voice low but firm. Ha! Eva looked at me, confusion briefly crossing her features. I turned my gaze toward her, meeting those violet eyes directly. Something in my expression made her pause, made the confusion fade into watchfulness. There will be a next time, I said, my voice steady, each word precise and deliberate. And the next time I face a bishop, I will win. No hesitation, no doubt, no uncertainty. The world had rules, power structures, hierarchies that had remained in place for centuries. But rules could be broken. Power structures could be toppled. Hierarchies could be rewritten. Next time I will win 100%. No matter what. Without anybody's help. I meant every word. This wasn't bravado or false confidence. This was a statement of fact, a declaration of intent that I would make reality through whatever means necessary. I saw the flicker of something in Eva's eyes. Surprise, certainly, but something else too. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Then, she smiled. And for the first time, I saw a glimpse of respect in her expression. Not the cautious acknowledgement she gave to talented students, but true respect, the kind reserved for equals. Two types of people can say that when they are this weak, Eva said as she leaned in to flick my forehead, the casual gesture at odds with the seriousness of her tone. Idiots infected with madness, or... Her violet eyes sparkled as she smiled wider, the expression transforming her face, making her look younger, almost girlish. Geniuses who aren't satisfied with what they have. Your answer is beyond acceptable, Arthur. After all, you are rank 1 of Mythos Academy. Thank you, I said as I looked at her with surprise, a hand on my forehead where she had flicked me. The gesture was strangely personal, almost familial. I want you to grow well, Eva said, her expression sobering slightly as she returned to her desk. After all, this generation. She let our words trail off, but I could tell what she was saying. I could feel her hope, that finally this generation will end it. This generation will end the cults and the miasmic species. And well, in the future we won't have any choice. Chapter 290. I barely had a second to process before a blur of silver crashed into me. Cold yet familiar arms wrapped around my neck, pressing against me with surprising force. Seraphina? I muttered, momentarily stunned. She looked up, ice-blue eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Her long silver hair framed her face, cascading like moonlight over my shoulder. Arthur, she said, her voice quiet but firm. There was no hesitation, no unnecessary words, just a statement of fact, as if saying my name was enough. I held her back, feeling the way she clung to me. Not desperately, not frantically, but completely. Seraphina didn't do things halfway. When she committed to something or someone, it was absolute. What are you doing here? I asked, still slightly breathless. The academy dormitories were restricted. How did you even get in? Not important, she replied, her tone utterly dismissive. Of course. That was very Seraphina. Rules were mere suggestions to her. Obstacles to be navigated around when they stood between her and what she wanted. Her fingers traced lightly over my collar, barely brushing against my skin. The touch was feather-light, yet I felt it with startling clarity. Then, as if she had made some sort of decision, she lifted her chin slightly. I missed you, she admitted. A rare thing for Seraphina to say. She was never one for grand declarations or overflowing emotions. Her love wasn't loud like Rachel's, nor teasing like Cecilia's. It was subtle, like the quiet stillness before a snowfall. And right now, that snowfall had settled completely on me. I tilted her chin up, brushing my lips against hers. She tensed for a moment, then melted into me, her hands gripping the fabric of my jacket. Her kiss was cool at first, careful, restrained. But the moment I deepened it, she exhaled softly, her fingers tightening against me as she gave in. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. I didn't know. Time felt irrelevant. Finally, I pulled back, watching the way her usually composed face held the barest hint of warmth. A soft blush dusted her pale skin, her eyes just a little dazed. You've gotten better at that, she murmured, her voice level. But I caught the hint of something else beneath it, something almost vulnerable. I smirked, not needing to respond with words. I couldn't see you for much, she said after a while, her voice so quiet I almost missed it. When you woke up. I know, I replied. It wasn't enough, she continued, her fingers absently tracing patterns on my chest. The touch was light, almost hesitant, unusual for Seraphina, who was always so certain in everything she did. I needed to make sure you were really okay. I understood what she wasn't saying. Seraphina, who prided herself on control and composure, had been worried. For someone like her, admitting even this much vulnerability was rare. "I'm here now," I said, tightening my arms around her, feeling the slight chill of her skin against mine. Serafina always ran cold, as if winter itself flowed through her veins. She nodded once, a slight movement against my shoulder. "Good." We stood there in silence for a moment longer, the evening light filtering through the dormitory window, casting long shadows across the floor. "I should go," Serafina finally said, though she made no move to leave. "You could stay," I suggested, not quite ready to let her go. The thought of the empty room after she left seemed suddenly unbearable. She pulled back slightly, studying my face with her penetrating gaze. Those ice-blue eyes missed nothing, cataloging every detail, every micro-expression. "That would be unwise." "When has that ever stopped us?" I asked, allowing a small smile to form. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost imperceptibly. "Never." Just like that, I picked her up and put her on my lap as I sat in bed. Her slight frame fit perfectly against me, as if she had been designed to occupy this exact space. Her cheeks turned into a beautiful shade of red, a stark contrast against her silver hair and pale skin. "Arthur," she said, my name carrying a weight from her lips that it never did from anyone else's. Her hands found my shoulders, steadying herself. "I was so afraid when I heard you fought a bishop." "Why did you do something so stupid?" The question hung between us, heavy with everything she wasn't saying. Serafina never wasted words. Each one was carefully chosen, precisely delivered. "I had to," I responded, meeting her gaze directly. No point in lying to her. She would see through it immediately. Serafina turned back, her eyes narrowing, the temperature in the room seeming to drop a few degrees with her displeasure. "I don't believe your genius brain couldn't come up with a better plan. I also heard from Rachel that you didn't call the ascendant rank knight captain till much later." Of course Rachel would tell her that. "Guilty as charged," I said as I pulled her in while putting my forehead on her shoulder, breathing in her scent. Winter roses and frost. "That is correct. In the end, the plan I came up with was to end up fighting him." "Why?" Serafina urged, one cool hand coming up to rest against the back of my neck, not pushing me away, but not letting me hide either. "'Cause I need to be stronger," I said, the words feeling inadequate even as they left my mouth. How could I explain the burning need that consumed me? The knowledge that I wasn't yet enough to protect what mattered? "Even stronger?" she asked as I nodded. There was a note of confusion in her voice, barely perceptible but there. Serafina had known me long enough to understand my drive, but not the depths of it. I looked at Serafina properly. She was stronger now, close to white rank. She would reach white rank by the time I reached low integration rank. The gap between us was closing but still there, and that wasn't even accounting for the others, each powerful in their own right. And yet, compared to what we faced, I want to protect all four of you, and for that, I need strength, I said as I kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt both tender and insufficient. "Fool," she said as she pushed me down onto the bed, her silver hair falling around us like a curtain, isolating us from the rest of the world. Her eyes, usually so cold and controlled, now burned with an intensity that caught me off guard. "Think about how much we worry about you." Then, she kissed me, her lips firm against mine, demanding a response. "Think about how much it hurts us." She kissed my lips again, more gently this time, a contrast that left me breathless. "Think about how much my heart hurts." She kissed again, the gesture becoming almost desperate. "Think," she said, her voice choking as she pointed to her chest, a rare display of emotion from someone who guarded her feelings so carefully, "about how my heart which beats solely for you will be like when you are not around." The tremble in her voice undid me. Serafina, who faced down monsters without flinching, whose composure never wavered even in the direst circumstances, was allowing me to see her fear, her vulnerability. "Sarah," I said as she looked at me with a sad expression, one that seemed to age her beyond her years. In that moment, I could see all the losses she had endured, all the pain she had carefully hidden away. "I love you," she whispered in my ear, her voice sending tingles all over my body, each word deliberate and weighted with meaning. "I want you so much that I was willing to declare war on Rachel for you. I will do anything for you. So be mine." The possessiveness in her tone didn't surprise me. Serafina had always been territorial, had always seen the world in terms of what was hers to protect and what wasn't. What surprised me was the raw emotion behind it, the plea beneath the command. I grabbed her and flipped us, going on top of her in one fluid motion. Her hair spread across my pillow like spilled moonlight, her eyes widening slightly at the sudden change in position. She blinked as I kissed her deeply, pouring everything I couldn't say into the gesture. My apology for worrying her, my gratitude for her concern, my promise to try to be more careful, even knowing it was one I might not be able to keep. Finally, we broke apart as I needed to breathe. She didn't, not yet. Another reminder of how different she was, how unique. "I love you too, Serafina," I said, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face, letting my fingers linger against her cool skin. "And I'm sorry." She studied me for a long moment, those ice-blue eyes seeing more than I wanted to reveal. "But you'll do it again, won't you? Risk yourself. Push too far." It wasn't a question. She already knew the answer. "I have to," I said quietly. "There's too much at stake." Serafina sighed, a soft